Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another founder interview. And this time I'm happy to have Chris and Joe from Myne, who have just finished up the first batch of the Parallel Startup Bootcamp. How are you doing today, guys?
Yeah, all good. Thanks for having us back.
Awesome. Yeah, and I was glad to see your pitch the other night. I thought you did a great job, and we'll get into what you guys think about it in a little bit. But during the 4 weeks of the boot camp, what area would you say you've made the most progress? And let's start with the startup idea itself. How did you progress with Myne?
Myne, I think, has come on leaps and bounds. So we came to the bootcamp with the idea of making investing in property more accessible to everyone. And we've really kind of validated that through the course of this. And what we've done is, we ran a fake door test to effectively figure out if people would actually want to invest in properties through a platform like this, through fractional investing. And so from our landing page, we took users to effectively a basic form, but in that process, they would fill out information on how they would invest, how much they would want to invest in the property based on some criteria that we'd predefined, based sort of rental yields and estimated appreciation, just based on some general UK averages. And over the course of the last month, well, the fake door test has probably actually been going for more like 10 days, 2 weeks. We've kind of had soft pledges from 34 investors, but that amount has actually totaled over £110,000. So I think we've really kind of proven that there is a demand there for fractional investing of short-term properties. And I think that's really been the kind of focus and the biggest and kind of the best achievement so far of the bootcamp.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the goal was to gain traction. You guys sort of went above and beyond that, not only validated interest in the idea, but got people to sort of say, this is how much I'd be willing to put up and put into the idea itself. So that's a great job on that. We'll talk a little bit more about the fake door test later. But how have you guys progressed as founders then?
Yeah, I think as founders, it's an interesting one. I think from my point of view, talking about this idea in public's been quite a big thing for me. It's something that, when you go to the pub with your mates, you might bring it up and just talk about it for a little bit, but then going on LinkedIn and like telling all the people you used to work with and your professional network about it is like another level. And it was always something I was daunted by before, but having done it, it's been amazing the response I've got from my network, and it's it's just been incredible. And then conversations that have started off the back of that, other people that have reached out because they're interested in the idea, and without just kind of building in public and sharing things and getting out there to the world, this never would have happened.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm glad to hear that you found support there. So the validation process that you use, the fake door test, for those of us that aren't very familiar with these sort of tests in sort of the product realm, how did you set it up? What did it look like? And why did you want to do it in the first place?
Sorry, was on mute. The fake door test is really to kind of assess the market demands and to kind of validate. It can obviously only work to a certain extent because it is very basic technology, but it's to validate a level of demand before spending how many thousands of pounds on developing an actual piece of working technology. And the whole point of it was to kind of understand how much and if people would be willing and wanting to invest in something like Myne, so in fractional property investing. So how it worked is when people signed up on our landing page, we redirected them to a form. So we used Tally, for example, and we designed it to kind of look like a very basic version of what a kind of website would look like. People would put in their name, their email, and then we would show them a property and say this property is expected to yield X% this year, and its appreciation is expected to grow at Y% over the next however many years. And we asked people to kind of suggest how much they would want to invest in that property. People had the option of putting £0, £10, £100. It was an open-ended question. Now, over the course of the last 10 days, people have gone through that, and 34 investors have put down an average of £3,278 each. After that, they were then directed to a page where we said, sorry, we're not live at the minute. This is just a test. We want to make sure we're creating the right platform for all our users. Are you still interested in being a customer of Myne? And do you want priority access when we go live? All bar one of those customers actually went through and said, yes, I want priority access. So I guess it kind of shows that people aren't annoyed that we're not live yet and we're not tricking them. We're just kind of keeping them engaged with the process of building out the startup.
Right on. Yeah, that was one thing that I've always felt kind of, uncomfortable about with landing pages that didn't have a product tied to them yet. Sign up and get started. Oh, we actually haven't started yet. Was the response. But in this case, I think it was really important for you guys to see sort of A, if they were interested, or B, how much they would like to invest. And it showed that you put the work in to give a real example, use accurate numbers for the outcome of the investment. So I think that sort of made it more trustworthy or more believable for the reader. Just guess.
Yeah, exactly. That was the idea behind it.
Yeah.
And I think we were both kind of surprised by the reaction we actually got, considering we went out there and were kind of saying that it was going to be from as little as £100 to make it accessible. The fact that the average is like £3,000, we weren't expecting that at all. So that's a really great response.
Yeah, it sounds super. All right. Just a general question. Do you have any person or persons who really inspire you as founders?
Yeah, I guess, especially in the building public space, there's a couple of founders that I personally follow, and they're quite active on social media and listen to their podcasts. As I said, Dan Murray-Serter, who's the founder of Heights, and Nick Telson, who was the founder of Design My Night and is quite openly developing a B2B sales platform called Trumpet. Now, they offer loads of kind of advice as second-time founders, but also showcase the value of building public. And they're, it's been very helpful following them kind of even before the bootcamp, and then considering during the bootcamp, kind of focusing in on what they're doing and how they're kind of doing it has been really helpful. And I guess, the classic one, Paul Graham, we've very much taken a do things that don't scale approach to start through this bootcamp. So, he's always got plenty of great advice.
Yeah, so for me, I think it follows on from the Paul Graham example. A while ago, I listened to the podcast Masters of Scale with Brian Chesky on it, the founder of Airbnb. And obviously that's kind of in the same kind of space and tied closely to what we want to do. And they followed that advice down to the T, where they were going and interviewing people that put their properties on Airbnb and understanding what works for them, what doesn't. And I think that really resonated with us. So when we were kind of speaking to users that signed up to the list, having calls with them, the amount of information we got that was things we didn't think about were, it's really kind of eye-opening. And we wouldn't have done that if we didn't reach out to them and start really small.
Right on. And just off the top of your heads, do you remember how many of the users you actually interviewed during the process?
I think it's about 16 now, maybe closer to 18 at this point.
Cool. All right. If you could go back to the start of the boot camp, what would you do differently, if anything?
Good question. I personally am quite happy with the process we've gone through on the bootcamp. I think we're in quite a good position. I think it would be when we first produced the fake door test, it was too long, so people weren't completing it. But we kind of fixed that bug more recently, and the kind of responses we've got from that have been considerably better. Because I was kind of asking too many questions and stuff like that. So I would have probably altered that earlier on, but it's all part of the learning. So, I personally probably wouldn't have changed anything.
I think for me, maybe just getting started sooner. I think and even before this boot camp, we were kind of, our next plan was getting a landing page up and running that we could then drive people to and see how they converted. And I think you go back and forth so much on making it perfect that you waste a lot of time just when you should just be sharing it, getting people to read it and give feedback. So I think just getting started with it all sooner would be my takeaway.
Good thought.
Yeah, and Joe, you've been previously you were a mentor and you organized an accelerator program for startups. So how's it been for you as a founder on the other side of this experience?
I think the most difficult thing is taking your own advice. A lot of the advice given is kind of advice I've passed on to founders previously. So I was kind of well aware of the advice that would come my way, but actually taking my own advice has been probably harder than I thought it would be initially. But to actually sit on the other side of it has been a massive learning experience for me, and something I've enjoyed as well.
Awesome. Did you guys have any favorite workshop or webinar from the boot camp, if you can remember, and why?
I think mine personally was the first one about building in public and how we kind of share this on social media. It's something I've never been great with social media myself. Like personally, I don't really use social media. I have it, but it just kind of sits there. So having these tactics that we could apply to how to write good posts that target the right users, that kind of thing, was really valuable to me.
All right. And now that the bootcamp is over, do you have a clear vision of what the product Myne itself will look like going forward? Is it an app, a web app? What do you think?
Yeah. So it will probably be a web app to start with. It would always be nice to have an app eventually, but I don't think that's in the immediate plans. I think we need to run a number of experiments. Obviously, the barrier to entry and the problem that exists for a lot of people is the same problem that we will have. There's high monetary barriers in terms of regulation for ownership. So we will probably run a rent-to-rent experiment. So we will rent from a landlord, raise a year's worth of money up front, and then distribute back to the investors the rental income. Now, there obviously won't be any appreciating value in terms of the asset and ownership there, but people will still be able to generate income by investing with us. So it's probably a cheaper way and a more lean experiment that we could run. And yeah, we just need to plan out a number of experiments to figure out what will work best for us. But the concept behind it and the mission still remains the same: to make property investing more accessible to everyday people.
All right. Are there any other experiments that you'd like to try? I think there are a lot of different cool ways to grow Myne in the future, and unfortunately, most of them require a good amount of money to pull off. So other than the rent-to-rent, do you have any other ideas for ways to grow the network? Either in terms of properties or in terms of investors?
Yeah, so another one is the types of investors we're targeting. Eventually, we want to have retail investors on our platform. But to start with, through this process, we spoke to a lot of industry experts, learn more about the regulation side of it, and how it's easier to get this off the ground. And one of the kind of pieces of advice is going after high net worth individuals, so professional investors, as they're not regulated as heavily, but it means we can still prove the concept. And then once we've done that, it's easier then to get regulated. So that would be another one, targeting these high net worth individuals. But then the question comes, how is best to target these and speak to these?
That makes a lot of sense. All right. So putting on rose-tinted glasses, then, what does success look like for Myne in 3 to 6 months?
Yeah,
I think...
sorry, you take it, Chris.
Sorry. I think we had planned better than last time, but I think the rent-to-rent experiment that Joe talked about, it would be good to be in a place where we've got one of those set up within kind of 6 months, and potentially looking for the next one. Now, obviously, we need to kind of find a property, find people that are willing to invest, which we're in a good place with that at the moment. But that would be ideal. And then also with the regulation side of it, be in a better place than we are today, where we're closer to getting regulated, so that we can then start having retail investors on our platform.
All right. Well, I look forward to following your progress there. You've just finished up your pitch this week, as it was the end of the bootcamp. How do you think it went, and what would you change, if anything, ahead of future pitches to investors?
I think we'd really like to kind of discuss our plans for experiments, actually, and kind of include some of that detail in our pitches to show how we're moving forwards, what we've kind of learned from past experiments. I think it's really important to mention that, and it's not something that we kind of highlighted too much in the pitch. It kind of came up briefly in the Q&A, but I think highlighting that in the pitch will be great as well. And I think we need to kind of highlight more detail on the competition. Again, it came up in Q&A, but it would be good to kind of speak about each of those competitors and how we differ from them.
Right. Anything else? Okay. All right. So last question then, and we'll wrap up. What feedback do you have for the team here at Paralect on the bootcamp itself? This is obviously the MVP version of the bootcamp. It was batch 1. So how do you think we can improve it for founders ahead of batch 2?
I think one of the discussions that me and Joe have been having between ourselves and kind of reaching out to others is, how can we set up these experiments? What does the MVP look like, even if it doesn't go anywhere with Paralect? How do we do this kind of thing on our own? So potentially having that kind of thing built into the bootcamp could be really helpful, just to give us a better starting point, especially when it comes to the pitches, so that we know, this is going to be what we're doing as our next steps. I think that we found out eventually, we kind of got there, but it took a lot of talking to industry experts, that kind of thing, and working through the options to know what are our best next steps.
All right. Well, thanks again for your time, and thank you so much for going through and really crushing it in the bootcamp batch 1 with your startup Myne. It's been exciting to watch your journey, and it will be exciting to continue to watch it. So I will put links to your Momentum landing page and any other links you guys want me to put in the show notes so that people can follow along and see what happens with Myne in the near future. It'll be fun.
Cool. Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.